On this episode, Art of the Album Cover is going to talk RCA Records and their contribution to album cover art in the beginning. RCA Records is an American record company that was founded in 1929. Back in the day, RCA Records was famous for being the label that Elvis Presley was on. In 1929, the Radio Corporation of America, RCA Records, purchased the Victor Talking Machine Company. Now, the Victor Talking Machine Company at the time was the world's largest manufacturer of phonographs, including the Victrola and phonograph records. So when they merged, the new company became RCA Victor. 78 RPM records were standard at the time, but RCA Records were the first to introduce 33 RPM records. In 1931, RCA Records introduced what they called a program transcription. Now, these were a little different than the micro groove records that would become the standard by 1948, but in 1931, they released these 33 RPM records. The machines to play them were just a little too much for people to afford in the era of the Great Depression as well, so they never really caught on and were basically abandoned by 1933. And then, after the war, Columbia Records introduced the 33 RPM micro groove vinyl LP record, and it became a huge success. RCA Records, however, wasn't quite so quick to jump on the 33 RPM bandwagon. For some reason, the leader of RCA Records didn't want to release 33 long play micro groove records, so they held out for a couple of years at least. In fact, RCA Records didn't release a 33 RPM record until 1950, and by then they had lost out on millions of dollars of revenue, and they basically had no choice to finally release 33 RPM records. The RCA Records releases were unique in that they had a cover that I call a frame cover. You have the picture in the middle, framed by the white border, and then there's the outside layer as well. And that's what all of the RCA Records releases look like for at least a few years, starting in 1950. This is the first 10-inch 33 RPM record released on the RCA Records Red Seal Records brand, LM1. It's Boston Pops, featuring Arthur Fiedler as conductor, Smetana, the Moldau and Dvorak, Husitska Overture, Opera number 67. The Red Seal Records brand was the RCA branch featuring classical recordings, and this is the original label of RCA's Red Seal Records. So this is again from 1950, the first Red Seal Records release. That's what the original label looked like, and in time it would evolve into probably one of my favorite old school record labels, the Red Seal Records Shaded Dog labels. We'll visit those a little bit later in this episode. LM2 is highlights from Madame Butterfly. Same idea, the frame cover with the white border around just a great picture and the colors. Here we have LM8, Tchaikovsky's Nutcracker Suite, one of many Nutcracker records I own. If you collect classical records or old records, you're going to come across a few Nutcrackers. Another of the Boston Pops and Arthur Fiedler. Now, Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops literally released hundreds of records in the 50s. This is LM10. Here's another Nutcracker Suite, LM46, featuring Leopold Stokowski and his symphony orchestra. The colors, great colors here. Jan Pierce, Golden Moments of Song. Tony Martin, 2 Tickets to Broadway. This one, it sort of extends beyond the border. First one that I have an example of that sort of thing. The big hand, as you can see, holding the tickets. The background goes through to the hand and also out to the edge of the cover. Any sort of South American music, you find very colorful covers. The drawings, people dancing, the band's playing, everybody's having a good time. This one, very yellow. And the difference here, no white border. This time, just the picture, Then the background bleeds through. It's in the poster in the middle here. That's the last of the 10-inch records I have featuring the frame border cover. But it wasn't limited to just the 10-inch releases, of course. RCA Victor also released 12-inch 33 RPM vinyl records, and they were mainly classical pieces. And this is the earliest RCA Red Seal record I have 12-inch. LM1003 is Tchaikovsky's Swan Lake, the St. Louis Symphony Orchestra. Vladimir Goldschmidt, the conductor. And the Red Seal record, the label for the 10-inch records, similar to the one of the 12-inch. This one a little bit brighter with the writing. LM1111, Concerto in D, Opera 35. Pretty cool picture. The violin and the portraits. And then have a look at the label. This is from 1950, an early version of the shaded dog label. Very cool, the maroon colors, and the dog is kind of shaded, right? In the shade, the shaded dog. That's one of the things that really stands out about these RCA frame border records is the colors. You can see them on the 10-inch records, of course, but on the 12-inch, they just really jump out. The orange, the floating hands, the heart, it's just fantastic, the colors. And then the backs is just that, plain text, tell you what's inside. Red, Rose Marie, Al Goodman and his orchestra. This one has a picture of Al. This one a favorite of mine. Mozart, Eine kleine Nachtmusik, the Boston Symphony. Check these colors out. Another Al Goodman, Roberta. And these ones always nice because they have Al on the back cover. And this one is interesting because I've been talking about them being frame covers with the border, the frame around the picture. And this one actually has a frame around a picture. Mussorgsky's Pictures at an Exhibition. So the Red Seal Records division of RCA Victor continued till about 1973. They became renowned for their sound quality. I showed you the early versions of the label starting in 1950. That's what it looked like. And then it evolved, and around 1958, I think it was, maybe 1957, what became known as the Shaded Dog label was introduced. This is a record from 1959. It's the debut of Leontine Price, A Program of Song, fantastic record. And it features the RCA Records Shaded Dog label. Just fantastic colors, the dog, shaded of course. And the Shaded Dog label is known for high quality recordings. It was introduced same time as stereo, that's what set it apart, that's what they said. This is a stereo high quality recording, and you should definitely get your hands on it. If you see one of these, the Shaded Dog label, take that record home with you. Now, are you ready for this? One of a kind, something I guarantee you've never seen before inside of this record right here. On the previous episode of The Art of the Album Cover, I introduced you to the Folkways record covers, and inside of the Folkways covers, there was an extra piece of cardboard. Now, this is something I never would have discovered. In all of my years, 35 plus years of buying records, I've never seen this before, and I don't know if I would have come across it unless this record here had been damaged. This is, as you can see, the Desert Song, Catherine Grayson, Tony Martin. It's pretty musty. It doesn't smell very good. And the reason I bring it to your attention is the one-of-a-kind thing that is inside. It is split, the cover, so it's open. I didn't do this. This was damaged like this. But when you open it up, you can see, kind of right there, there's an extra piece of cardboard. When I take the record away, you will really see it. Right there. For some reason, RCA Records decided to put an extra piece of cardboard in their records. Not sure why. The most logical explanation, looking at it in the design and when you put a record in there, would have been, I guess, to sort of hold the record in place, or maybe have it rolling around, but it's in a cover, but maybe it would help. It's not just one piece of cardboard, there's actually two, right there, together combined. They split apart like that. They're in there, folded over, the record goes in there, and there you have it. I never would have noticed that. You can notice it now. Now that I know it's there, you can actually feel it. You can't really see it here, but let me show you. From what I've discovered, this extra piece of cardboard started around 1950 and continued until 1954. Those are the examples I have found. If you squeeze, you can see it. It's not something easy to show on camera, but trust me, it's there. You can feel it. Now that you know it's there, wow, you can feel it. I've got a lot of these RCA Victor records, and not a lot of them have those little stabilizer things, but there's a few of them in there. And it's interesting because it's not just the 10-inch records. I have one example of a 12-inch. This is the Brigadoon soundtrack. I believe from 1951 this is. It's not quite split, but you can feel it in there. You can see it in there when you open it up, and there you have a 12-inch. Now you can imagine, again, the cost of producing an extra piece of cardboard in every cover. You could see why that didn't really last very long. But what was it? What was the idea? I've looked online. I've yet to find out an explanation. If you have any idea, please let me know. Something to look for. If you see an RCA Victor, a 10-inch or a 12-inch featuring the frame cover, or even not with the border cover, but an older one like this, check for the extra thing. You can feel it. And it looks like that. The RCA Victor frame cover, the border cover that I've been showing you, continued, was 1950 until about 1953, into 1954, but then by 1954, maybe late 1953, the cover started to change. They started to take advantage of the entire cover, and they produced some gems like this. Here we have our old friends, Arthur Fiedler and the Boston Pops, Opera Without Singing. Just a fantastic record, great cover. Here's another from 1954, Old-Fashioned Dance Party. Great art with the Six Fat Dutchman. This is a 12-inch. They expanded the cover to include the whole canvas. They still had the RCA Victor Red Seal Records label up in the corner. And this is probably one of my favorites. It's the only example I have of a Jim Flora cover. From 1954, this is the War of the Bands concert. Ralph Flanagan and Buddy Morrow, the combined orchestras, live at the Coliseum of the Michigan State Fairgrounds in Detroit on December 19th, 1953. It is an incredibly awesome album. Absolutely live. Can you imagine? Just 1953, two big bands playing together. You can hear the crowd, you can hear the musicians shouting, having a great time. The cover is incredible. You have musicians morphing into combat machines. The flying trumpet player, the gunner drum players, the parachutist with the saxophone, the clarinet and the Jeep. What keyboard player wouldn't love to have guns shooting out of their piano? The trombone tank. Jim Flora, a pioneer in early album art. He was an assistant to Alex Steinweiss, who was the subject of episode 1 of the art of the album cover, basically the inventor of the album cover. And this, again, the only Jim Flora I have, just a fantastic cover. That's the RCA Victor contribution to the album cover in the early days, from the frame border cover to the flashy Flora cover. Just incredible examples of the art of the album cover.